Welcome to another episode of Buyside Hippies. Today we have with us a really special entrepreneur who has achieved massive success in her life. And this is the success I wish even I can come to at some point in my life. Uh, we have today Mabel Chacko, who's been described by the business world as the first lady of the new banking. Hi, Mabel, how are you doing?
Hi, Asim. Wonderful. Great to have the session with you.
I'm super excited to do this with you, Mabel. Mabel, you have been super successful, been backed by Tiger Global, 314 Capital, best VC funds, raised a lot of money. You did a Series B round a couple of years back. So can you please tell me what is this idea which you have about your startup Open? I mean, it's a very big startup, so but I want to understand what is it really about.
So, Open is a new bank focused at small businesses for the SMEs, for the startups and the small business owners. The problem we're trying to solve is that business banking has always been, broken for small businesses. Once you've grown up as a company, as a business, everything is sorted for you. But when you're in the grind of building your business from scratch, that is when you need a lot of support. But all of this is not available. You're always on the retail side of banking. So, in addition to that, businesses tend to use a lot of tools to manage their finances, which is completely disjointed from the entire banking layer where all the money movement happens. So that's what got us started on neobanking. Neobanking is nothing but building. It's a fintech. It's all about solving the problems faced by your customer segment. In case of Open, it is small businesses, and bringing it and binding it to the banking layer. So there is the banking layer, the regulated banking layer, where all the banking license and all is held, and you take that and you build all the services around it or on top of it, and that is what is neo banking. It's a little different from digital banking, given by regulated entities like banks. Here we don't have the license to run a bank. We don't have a banking license of our own, but we partner with a bank in the or with multiple banks, and build all the other tools and services for the user segment around the banking layer that is provided by the regulated banking entity.
Got it. So as I understand, a neobank bases its business model around the traditional banking entities which are already existing. So, say a SMB startup cannot go to say an HDFC and do all their banking transactions easily and smoothly. So that is the gap you saw, and this is what Open does: builds the layer around cushioning around the bankings, the traditional banking for these startups and your SMBs. Is my understanding correct here?
A little different. That is anyway solved by the traditional banking layer. What neobanking does is it builds a lot of other tools and brings it together along with the banking layer in order to solve the needs of the user segment. So in case of Open, it is small businesses. Small businesses use a lot of tools for accounting, for payment collection, for reconciliation, for raising invoices. So what we did at Open was we built all these tools along with the banking layer or around the banking layer to give a more holistic solution to the small business owner. So instead of going to 10 different tools and 10 different interfaces, everything gets managed on one single platform.
Got it.
In
Got
case
it.
of, similarly, in case of, say, consumer neobanks like Jupiter, like Neo, they would be having different customer segments, say millennials. Say if we are flatmates and we're sharing a room, sharing a flat and expenses around that, what Jupiter allows you to do is have a shared account where you put in all the expenses, help manage and streamline whatever expenses are there, and then get an overall insight of what got spent in for food, what got spent for shopping and other expenses. So it gives a smarter layer around the banking account that the user would be having.
Got it. Mabel, I believe you got the neo banking concept in true sense in Asia. You were the pioneers of the neo banking. Now, 4 years later, you started in 2017. Now, 4 years later, how big has this sector got, according to you?
So the segment is really huge. The segment that we alone cater to, that Open caters to, is the SME new banking segment, and there are more than 51 million SMEs that are there in India that need to be catered to. So there's space enough for not just one but multiple SME focused neobanks. The market is even larger on the consumer side, there where there could be use cases for students, for millennials, for young professionals, the first time workers, different segments of people who use foreign exchange, who need to travel abroad, a traveler's account. So there are different use cases that could be solved, and overall the global market, they say, is growing at a CAGR of roughly 45 to 47%
Wow.
year on year, and by 2027 approximately, it's going to be a $500 billion market that is there to solve for globally.
Wow. So, are you planning to expand to other regions outside Asia as well? Right. Currently,
Yes,
you're
we are also.
focusing.
No, while today we are focused at the Indian market, over the next few years, would definitely see Open going global towards the Southeast Asian market, towards the European as well as the US market.
Got it. So maybe I'll request you if you can tell me two things. Firstly, what was the story behind starting Open? How did it all start? I mean, you were working in Citrus and then you went on to another startup. And what is, why did you name it Open?
Sure. So it's a bit of a, if I may say, a personal plus, research kind of a thing that led us to starting Open. So somewhere these were all the challenges that whatever I'm solving for today are the same challenges I faced when I was doing my previous startups, and have done four fintech startups before starting Open. So these are the challenges that I started with, and I always saw it as a personal challenge. Maybe I wasn't educated enough, but the way I figured out during my interactions through my role at Citrus Pay and at PayU with other merchants and other SMBs, I figured out this was a problem that everyone was facing. Every startup was going through the same challenge, and every small business owner was going through the same challenges that I was facing. That banking happens where all the money is coming in and going out, but then you have this friendly CA who has to go through your bank statement, and you need to underline everything and tell them exactly what this income was for or what this expense was for. And that is the kind of problems faced by small businesses, because ultimately on your bank statement you only see 16, 17 digit UTR numbers through which you have to reconcile all of that. So we started working on on solving this problem by saying that if I can make the banking layer any more smarter by integrating a lot more tools into the banking layer, then I will be able to tell them that, hey, this is an invoice that you raised to a team for a freelance project and that has got paid, or this is a bill that you raised to your computer vendor, and this is the payment you have done for buying a laptop, which is also an asset to the company, and hence at the back end your entire accounting becomes auto reconciled, and you're able to get a clear picture of what your income, what your profit, what your loss is looking like on a regular interval, not just when you meet your CA friend.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. Got it.
And why
Maybe,
open? I'll
yeah,
answer the second question as well. Well, the segment is called open banking, where banks expose APIs for two fintechs, and you consume it. So that is the technical part of the answer. The fun part of the answer is that if you go to any business when it's operational, you will find the name open. We are open, open closed,
correct. Yeah.
written in front of their tags. So we somewhere derived it at this juncture, that that's something that resonates with any business owner.
It's a very well thought out name. Maybe since you mentioned about how like we how it all started, and you've been doing, and you've already done 4 startups, and this startup massively took off. And your previous 4 startups, you had mentioned even in one of your interviews that the tip you'll have for someone doing a startup is fail fast. It took you 4 startups to figure out the product market fit. So I just want to understand, like, when you started out before versus when you are here now, how has been the industry for entrepreneurs? How has it changed when you started in 2006? How was it like then? Did you have enough funding available? Were VCs even around? And how is it now for you? What's the difference you've seen and the mentality of people, people branching out, doing something cool for themselves? What do you think?
The entire startup ecosystem has evolved a lot. Now even you go to a small town, you would be able to find startup ecosystem of its own. When I started in Ahmedabad, and in those days, Ahmedabad is a great place for business, and it's the hub for businessmen. But they are all the traditional businesses, not the ones who understand equity funding models and things like that. So you know people really when I said that I'm a startup entrepreneur, there was always this clash between how you will be profitable, and whether you go chasing profit or you chase growth and see your valuation increasing. So people who understood that kind of growth was limited in Ahmedabad. People, there were great people to mentor you for on the business side of things, but very few people to mentor you on the startup side of things. Plus, in those days, all the venture funds, all the investors were either in Bangalore or in Mumbai or Delhi. So that's somewhere, the reason I decided to move from Ahmedabad to Bangalore back then in 2006, 2007, to start, doing my startup. So Anish, my co-founder back then, also shifted from Kerala to Bangalore along with me, because Kerala was similarly going through a very early growth of startup ecosystem in those point of time, and Bangalore already had an ecosystem. There was Head Start, there was Proto, there was Open Coffee Club, and a lot of places where we could go out and reach out to people who could guide us or mentor us. The access to capital and various other things. Things have changed a lot, and I'm really glad it has changed for good, because another Mabel would not have to move out of Ahmedabad, or another Anish would not have to move out from Kerala because of the good work being done by Kerala Startup Mission and Head Start and a lot of other such forums in these cities, smaller towns and cities. And today the scene is, it doesn't matter if you're coming from a small town. You could be sitting in a small town in, say you could be sitting in Ranchi, or you might be sitting in some other remote place, but still you do have ways to access. Plus, the entire digitization and all of this has made it so much more accessible for knowledge to be shared across digital platforms and to be consumed. So you, even if you are sitting somewhere in a very remote part of India, you still are able to listen to podcasts. You're able to attend webinars or events that you otherwise you would have had to spend a lot of money and travel to main cities for. And this is actually a great time to be an entrepreneur in India.
No, it's a crazy story because I see that. I mean, you came from a very professional, you're a very professional family background. Your parents were bankers for about 40 years. So how was it like, telling your parents that, hey, I don't want to take the already taken path and I want to do entrepreneurship, especially in 2006 and 7, when there were hardly any entrepreneurs, and especially starting out as a women entrepreneur. How was it like for you, Mabel?
My challenges were not more with my family, because my parents being bankers and my mom having dealt with, mom, dad, both. Mom was with IDBI Bank, dad was with State Bank of India. They've dealt with a lot of entrepreneurs. So when I told them I want to be an entrepreneur, they exactly knew what kind of support I would require in terms of sustaining myself and things like that. So my challenges were not so much, on convincing my parents. Yeah, they didn't expect me to be an entrepreneur, They always, I come from a generation that where we were taught ki doctor ka bacha doctor banega. So everyone thought I would be another banker because both my parents were bankers.
Right.
And I've grown up looking at, balance sheets and, all these things that happening around, and conversations at home were also around these things. So, but somewhere, when I told them that, listen, mom, dad, I understand you want me to be a banker, or my mom wanted me to be an IAS officer. When I told her that, listen, I want to start up, I want to do something of my own. That's when, she was like, okay, I understand you have an individuality, and you want to chase something. It's okay, you can go ahead and try out your experiments, but if you don't get it, you better write the PO exam that your dad is telling you to write and get a job in State Bank of India. So yeah, I did not see so much of resistance from my parents. They were really happy that I was coming out to be the individualistic, the way they had, or independent, the way they had thought I should be. But yeah, I faced a lot of other challenges. I was a non-tech person, so uh, being a non-tech person trying to build technology is always a challenge. There were times I used to resort to engineering college students to give them a final year project that could be cool, so that I could get the MVP of my prototype out in the market. There were a lot of challenges I faced while trying to do biometric payments in 2006 2007, because at that time there was no Aadhaar, and every time I would go trying to capture biometric using the Chinese reader that I
Yep.
had managed to put my hand on, it would give a new, and I was dealing with financial inclusion in those days. So literally going into the villages of Gujarat and trying to talk. So every time the farmer comes out back from the field, there would be a new cut, and the same reader would not recognize it as the same fingerprint of the same person. The other part of the challenge was all the men in villages used to think that I would run away with their property by capturing their biometrics. So it was always the women who would give me the fingerprint for sampling. And
Mm.
so those are some of the challenges that were there. It's a good thing to laugh about right now, but when you're facing it in the grind, it can get really, really frustrating in those days. But yeah, uh, there was all these lessons that I got to learn it right in the very first startup itself.
With cash next, I presume,
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
started up.
Touch to pay evolved into Cash Next. I had when I moved down to so Cash Next was started by Anish in Kerala. I was trying to do Touch to Pay in Gujarat, and somehow I was facing a lot of technology glitches. I was not able to build the MVP that is completely required. But I was good at alliances and talking to banks. I was good at BD, and Anish was the technical, guy who is the product innovator kind of soul. So he had cracked the MVP, but he was struggling to reach out to banks. So that's where our synergies met, and I decided to join him on his journey with Cash Next because that had already got a product in place.
Got it. Now I understand the timeline, how it actually happened. Well, what really is still sticking to my head is how you left your city to come to Bangalore. You made that sacrifice and just to come to a place to even get an opportunity, get a shot at doing what you want to do. And this actually put a lot of things into perspective, that being an entrepreneur at the end of the day is very, very challenging. You need to be doing in the right place, opening a startup. Wow. It reminds me
And
of,
just on that point, Asim, there's one thing that would like to mention, that the transition to come to a big city like Bangalore and the cost of living here,
yeah,
Anish and I were not able to afford paying deposit for a house or something. So, and we used to really struggle in those days. We were living on 20 or 30 rupees, which meant that you're just eating tiger biscuit and chai for a straight 8 9 months that we struggled to set up base in Bangalore. So some days, we used to get these coins that we used to save up, and the moment we save 200, 300 rupees, we would go to one of these local darshini hotels and have a proper sambar rice kind of meal because all the other days we would just be eating tiger biscuit and chai throughout the day, all 2 or 3 meals that we used to be able to manage. So that was, yeah,
Wow.
there was a lot of struggle. It's I can say that our parents were supportive, but not so supportive as to open up their purses and tell us that use our life savings to go and build it. We did see a lot of struggle together in building Cash Next. And when Cash Next was acquired by a Latin American company, that was our first, even though it was a very small amount, but a little bit of a relief to our survival struggles that we were facing at that point of time.
Amazing. From Tiger Biscuit to Tiger Global.
But
I think that's
basically,
a pretty, and with 30 million Tiger Global funding, I think that is a great journey to have one thing stuck around as a tiger. No, but seriously, I think that's a really aspirational story, Mabel. And I can only imagine how hard it would have been, especially in those days when even the people aren't that accepting. They're like, क्यों कर रहे हो जॉब ले लो did you ever have that thought when you were struggling okay boss let's just forget about this, let me just write the UPSC exam or just take up a job like a lot of people did back in those days.
see, even in those days, getting a job was not that easy as well, right? So, after a second startup failed together, we did near to it, which was into NFC payments in 2009 and 2000. That was 2010 actually, and it was quite difficult at that point because whatever we had saved up, we had completely dried up on that, and then it was inevitable that one of us had to take up a job. And Anish being a dropout, it was not any easy, but it was the kindness of some other entrepreneurs who saw the passion that we were having, and Anish did take up a full-time job for 1.5 years before we started on our next journey together.
This is just aspirational, Mabel. You know, I mean, so over the past these hard years you've had, and now you've made it in a big way. It's like you have this common analogy in India, like how like people come with just one ticket. To say Bombay to become an actor, and one of them takes off. It's like I mean, of course, it's a lot more calculated here, a lot more, it's a lot more about you than about luck. But yeah, it's a crazy story. Uh, I just want to understand what see about the startups you did, past four startups you did, what were the learnings you had got across your like 15, 16 years before you actually did the right thing at Open? What was it at Open which worked, and what was it not that did not work, and how did you use that to grow Open?
So, my biggest learning in this entire journey of doing startups is that you should really know who your user is, because unless you really understand that, unless you truly know whom you're building things for, the chances of you failing are really really high, right? A simple example: I was trying to do NFC payments at a time where NFC really didn't exist in the Indian market. Even today, NFC phones are really rare uh, to see, and it's only now that contactless, even in the form of cards, is being spoken about. So almost, think of me doing this almost 10 years back, in 2010 2011, trying to build a NFC payment infrastructure, and that was way too early. And the reason for getting on that journey was because while doing Cash Next, which was also a contactless technology but at a different level, a near sound data transfer kind of a contactless technology, NFC was being popularized by Citibank in the Indian market, at least in Bangalore. They had done a pilot with at Forum Mall, at one of the malls where they had deployed NFC terminals, and there was this huge, talk in the banking world about how NFC is going to crack the future of payments. And there were a lot of reports, market research reports like Gartner report and a bunch of others that were mentioning about how NFC is going to be the future of payments globally. There were a lot of pilots that were happening in Malaysia, in Dubai, and similar markets to India, and which is where we started building this entire NFC payment infrastructure that we were trying to build. But what and there were a couple of ways we could do that, but because we were dealing with feature phones, not even smartphones in those days, there are very simple hooks in which you could convert a feature phone into an NFC device. One was either by changing the memory card, or the other one was changing the SIM card. And the moment you're trying to change the SIM card, which is the route that we had taken, you always require a mobile operator into the play. When you try to do such kind of things, we built the entire tech rail for doing this entire, SIM card, NFC based SIM card issuance, conversion of existing phones into NFC devices, plus the payment part of doing merchant transactions using NFC devices. We built the entire tech for it. We spent almost 1.5 years trying to build the tech, where all I should have done was just walk up to another friend, another person on the road, and say that, hey, if I give you the SIM card that has got these amazing capabilities, would you change your SIM card? And if I ask you that question even today, Asim, I'll give you a SIM card, would you change your SIM card? Your answer would be no, right? So much for building all of it when I should have just spoken to the user and found out that the user would not change the SIM card. That's something that's a very big decision for someone. The number changes. Those days, mobile number portability was not even a question, right? So why would dual SIM phones did not exist? So why would someone change his SIM card just because it was a little more cooler or gave him some access to contactless payments? I learned it the hard way with near duty. Instead of focusing on what we were hearing on the banking world, the true customer was the person, the consumer, who was going to use the change his SIM card, and we should have spoken to him and not just to the bankers who were on the watch out for this technology. So in many ways, knowing who the user is one key learning, and secondly, being there at the right time, knowing when the pain point is. Solve something that is real right now. Don't solve for something that's going to be 2 years or 3 years later. That was my learning at Switch, because Switch was
Okay.
a payment platform for startups. We had a lot of technology that was very similar to what Stripe was offering in the global markets,
Correct.
but we
Correct.
were just 6 or 7 months ahead of time, and we ran out of steam before we could raise funds. So these are two key learnings for me: know who the user is very clearly, and solve something that is real, that is a problem today, and not for something that's futuristic.
Got it. Got it. No, I think you correctly pointed out the timing. See, Stripe was, of course, one example, but why ChargeBee worked in India probably is also because of the timing factor. They came at the time when things were super new, but this was the need in the market. And thank you for these insights. So, as I see it, how does it translate to learnings for new age entrepreneurs? So do you, when you say identify your customers, how would say if I want to start up, how will I identify my customer, my true customers? Will it be by just talking to people, or I don't know, just seeing trends, reading market reports? How did you figure out, Mabel? You have 16 years of experience of actually figuring out who the like after a while you figured out. How does it work out, Mabel?
So if I have to say, read market reports alone, and you can build the whole thing. I did that and I failed. There were a lot of market reports around NFC payments globally in India, available to Indian entrepreneurs. So it was, you can't just do a shortcut and read a market report. They are there to give you great insights of what is happening, because otherwise you would never know how what is the scale at which things are growing. So you must read market reports, but there's no shortcut to talking to people. Going out there, if you think you're building something for millennials, please go and talk to millennials. Try and understand how they understand and how they interact with interfaces, or how they use apps, how do they prioritize things. Unless you do that, there is no shortcut to saying that I'll read up a report about millennials and I'll build something for that. Similarly, if you're building something for SMEs or small businesses, go out on the field and talk to small businesses. That's when you will realize what their true challenges are, where they are spending a lot of their time on a daily basis, what could be optimized, and what is it that what would be a useful tool for them, compared to just going with a hypothesis that this is what they require. Second important aspect is whatever you do, don't wait to build the whole thing all together end to end and then go to the user and try to build whatever is the minimum viable prototype, the MVP. If you have if you have a hypothesis, go out, talk to the user, build whatever you've heard as per their needs. Once you build that, put it to the same set of users and try and see how they are interacting, whether they are taking it up or not. In doing so, you would realize that if you're going in the right direction, then great, you can go ahead and build all the other layers around it. If it's not working out, you've gone out on a wrong hypothesis. Maybe you'll have to do a course correction and pivot from whatever your first hypothesis was.
Got it.
So fail
Got it.
fast. Whatever
Got
you
it.
do, feel fast.
Can you give me an example when you were building Open? Of course, you had 10 years of experience coming when you were building this, but can you give me an example when you started Open? Did your initial hypothesis change? And how many iterations you actually did to actually get to the final product? If you can just give me an example.
Sure. So when we started Open, the initial almost 7 8 months was about finding the right banking partner who was willing to support us in this vision. But once we did that, we launched, and in the meantime, we were building our wait list of customers to whom we could roll out our very first beta version. The very
Correct.
first beta version of Open just had a virtual account. So you come in, you sign up, you get instantly you'll get a account number and a digital only account. So you would get an IFSC code and an account number to which you can give to all your clients to make payments to. And there was a basic invoicing functionality that we had built, and this is what we gave out to our beta users. What we figured out, yeah, and then there was a function to link any of your other existing current accounts or savings accounts and take the money out. So what businesses used to do is they would share these account numbers or create multiple of these account numbers for their various clients, and they would collect all the payments, and the money would instantly move out. The moment the money comes in, the money automatically moves out into another account. So not automatically, but the businesses tend to take it out to another linked account within the same day or within 48 hours of the money coming in. So there was no retention of money on the platform, right? But we figured out that yes, collection is a problem, and this is a finding getting a digital only kind of account is something that is a hypothesis that is real. It is not something that is a fake hypothesis that we were working on. So we understood we were going in the right direction, but then we put our focus on what would make the business owner retain the money on the platform,
Hmm.
and we understood that they still require a proper the need for a proper current account, right? And that's when we started talking to our banking partners that this is our hypothesis, this is the scale that we reached with this, and this is the ask, and can we start working on ways in which we can give a actual current account along with the platform. So that came in as the final version of the product that we put out, and that literally saw the entire numbers rocketing after that, because we had solved something that was a real problem asked by the users, supported by the banking partners.
Got it. Thank you for this example because a lot of people, when you speak about concepts in abstract, of course, it looks great. And people who have experience will only understand it. But since you've actually broken it down to the zilch, it really provides a perspective, okay, what it actually took to get this going. And since you've spoken about now the fintech sector, the payment sector, fintech is one of the rising sunrise sectors in India. Where like payments were hot at one point of time, a couple of years back, and disrupted the whole this fintech space. Where do you think now the fintech is going to be heading in the coming few years? What's going to happen?
It's going to be going to a point where anyone can be a fintech. There's something called embedded fintech that we started hearing of during ever since January 2021.
Limited fintech.
Uh,
You said limited fintech.
embedded fintech.
Embedded fintech. Okay.
Right. So get if fintech services getting embedded into anything and everything, into any layer or into any industry. For example, say a food delivery startup wanting to offer a savings account to their delivery boys, or to a
Okay.
marketplace wanting to offer their own branded, settlement, their own branded account, bank account to the sellers who are there on the platform. A school wanting to open and offer banking bank accounts for their students. So this, any place or any service or any industry you take, fintech getting embedded into these services, and that is what is going to see. That's what is going to that you would be able to see in the market growing towards over the past next 3 or 4 years.
Got it. Got it. Thanks for this perspective. Thanks for just like pointing out. Now I will also search for it. What is it about? Read more about the embedded fintech space. Mabel, I wonder, like when you raise so much money, Series B you did, 314 Capital, Tiger Global, what sort of probing questions do they essentially look for at growth stage level? Can you give me some perspective on that? And how do you convince these guys to give us the money, or do they come to you and say, take our money? What is this dynamic? How does it work out?
It never comes as, you come, they don't come to you and say that take our money. It never happens that way. But every round and every stage of a startup is a new journey, and whatever worked for you in pre-series A will not work in series A.
Correct.
Series B is another story. Series C is another story altogether.
Okay.
So every round is different. What you get judged for, or what you get measured against in each round is completely different. First, it's about getting your MVP out. Then it's about how many users you acquired. Then it's about how many users you retained. Then it's about what is your monetization like. Then it's about how do you see growth and scale. What is your ARR like? So every round is very different, and it's very different for different industries, for different kinds of startups. It's not like what worked for us is the same textbook model that would work for someone else.
Correct.
Um, but a couple of basic things that any round would see, or at least getting your first check out. They do evaluate you on basis of what your team is like, what your team's experience about for what you're doing, how strong the founders are, and then about the segment that you're working about. What is the kind of growth and potential that you would be able to achieve in that segment. So very initial rounds, those are the stories, but then slowly gradually it goes into ARR kind of discussions as well.
Got it. Got it. So I believe at Series B, an ARR is more probing question than the background of the
At series
founders.
C, it is more about the ARR. See, it is very different for different startups. So what I would say it was for me is very different. For it could be someone, it could be different for someone from the same industry as well. So it is unique to some. It is very unique to every startup. But overall, yeah, Series C onwards, you need to show your revenue, your monetization. That is the ideal benchmark at which things the rubber really hits the road.
Hmm. Hmm. Maybe thanks a lot for this insight as well. We don't have like a lot of Series C, Series D, Series B entrepreneurs. So I think all this insight you're putting out is actually something that's very, very tribe knowledge, or a tribe knowledge thing. Maybe one last question. Can you give one parting tip for an entrepreneur who wants to be at your place? Uh, if you just one parting tip, maybe.
Find great co-founders in whatever you're doing, because they are the ones who have to stick to you through the entire grind, and be prepared to work it really, really hard. There are no shortcuts to it. Uh, there is no shortcut to succeeding and building a startup. And then be prepared with your vision, at least mentally, on how you're going to build this as a culture in your company. The startup is one part of it. It's always a smaller team, but the moment it becomes the company, that is where you need to build the culture. You need to build connect with the people who work on your vision. And those are some things that define the trajectory that your startup takes off on.
Thank you so much, Mabel. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I really had a lot of fun doing this. So thanks a lot for this opportunity, Asim.